No one asked for this, but some people might want it, and I'm unhinged enough to do it. This is a super deep dive into the most recent Resident Evil Requiem gameplay, and I already have something in this still to talk about, so let's begin. Right now we are looking at Leon sitting on a desk waiting to meet with Victor Gideon, and I actually zoomed into this thing right here. It's a document that I think contains some kind of case notes, but if you zoom into this particular word, it says panacea, or panacea? I don't really know how to pronounce it. But a panacea is something that will cure all problems. So I wonder if this might be a code name for Elpis or something else that Victor Gideon was working on. Something that cures the curse of being human, potentially, and results in the zombies that we're about to see. Either way, it seems like a very telling word to use for a medical document. I don't know who this lady is, but I'm about to feel very sorry for her as she is about to get chainsawed, and there's something interesting about this doctor. When you look at him, you'll notice that the sclera around his eyes isn't white. Later on in the gameplay, we will see zombies with white sclera and this very light coloured iris here, but his are red, which makes me wonder if maybe he is one of the most recently turned zombie doctors in the game. She does do like an emergency announcement, sorry gal, over the internal comm system that says like code 666, something's gone wrong, and I wonder if this is literally maybe the first person to be infected and we are just seeing the infection set in. And I say that because later on we can see that other zombies, if I just find one here, other zombies, although they are bloodshot, their scleras are actually white. So I think that that doctor zombie that we saw must have literally just turned. After that poor woman gets chainsawed, we get to see a glimpse of Rhodes Hill Civic Care Centre before it all went to crap. Right here over Leon's shoulder you can see two figures outside the centre itself. Because this looks like an engraving, I'm gonna gander that this is a fairly old illustration, potentially like Victorian or Edwardian, but these are the same two pillars that are outside of the Civic Care Centre, and later on we even see a little bit of a model of the care centre that matches up this opening area right here, and we see Leon drive through these two pillars in one of the trailers for Resident Evil Requiem. Now this next bit could just be me reading way too much into models being reused, but it's a curious detail nonetheless. Almost all of these zombies in Resident Evil Requiem, trying to pause this at the right place, are married. They all have wedding rings of some kind on their fingers. Now this might be the case of they're reusing models for doctors and patients, so right here you can see he has a wedding ring right here that will glint in the light, and later on other doctors have similar wedding rings as well. This could just be reusing the same models, or there might be something else going on here, that perhaps people who are married are being lured to the Rhodes Hill Civic Care Centre, and their treatment is kind of used as an incentive for them to get to see their loved ones again. See, he has a ring too. And this wouldn't be something that I would point out, but so many zombies have wedding rings, and again that might just be reused body models, but I think it's worth pointing out nonetheless. I would also like to point out that although the men get very sensible flat shoes, all of the women doctors in this have kitten heels, and kitten heels are very fun to wear when you're out and about, but I wouldn't say they're particularly practical for medical purposes. So right here, this zombie is wearing kitten heels, and later on, when Grace is going up a stairway, right here in fact, you can see that this doctor as well also has kitten heels on. Thoughtfully, Grace has just covered that up, but she does, trust me. This is just something funny to point out. I don't think there's anything super deep to read into that, apart from the fact that clearly whoever made these models has never tried to walk or do something medical in kitten heels, because though the heels are itty bitty, they are still very annoying to have to walk around in. And you've got to imagine you would be slipping and sliding a lot in Gore and stuff if you were in a surgery with this or something. But yeah, Bella shoe wear please, thank you. Although I suppose they have less to worry about now they're actual zombies. Going back to Leon right here in his killing spree, or re-killing spree, we can see that there are multiple dead bodies in the Rhodes Hill Civic Care Centre already. There's one around here just behind this patient, and there's one up against the wall back there as well. I wonder if Leon spotted these when he was being escorted to this office, or if he was brought in a different way, because it certainly seems a bit nefarious that these bodies haven't yet made their way to the morgue of some kind, and I think is a subtle hint that things have started to go wrong before Leon arrived, and this might have just been the mass infection cherry on top of that very putrid cake. Something else to point out here that involves directing an uncomfortable bit of attention to Leon's crotch area, but it's for good reason, I promise you. It looks like he has a camera attached to his belt, potentially one that the DSO uses to keep track of his movements and quite literally see what he's doing. It becomes most clear to see when he's doing one of his roundhouse kicks, but it appears to be a very small, it's not even discreet, almost like a webcam size camera on his belt. It might be for something else, it may be for something like, I don't know, some specific holster or a magnet, but it very much looks like a camera. I'm just going to show you that in way more detail. Okay, so this is a good partial glimpse of it, and I'm going to show you another bit in a second. This right here, now it looks like it might be a holder for some kind of magazine, but if I skip forward just a couple of split seconds, this is a much closer look at it right here. We can see that this does look like a camera lens, and these might be kind of like flash bulbs so that the camera can more easily see what's in front of it. Now, if you think you know what this is, please do let me know in the comments, because I'm pretty convinced that it is actually a camera, especially because in this shot in particular, it looks like it has glass over it, so there is something protecting it. But if you think you might know what that is, if I'm just mistaking a magazine holder for a camera, do let me know in the comments. This next bit comes just after Leon has rescued Grace from the stalker enemy that she was fleeing from in the gameplay demo we've already seen. This is a really interesting glimpse at Victor Gideon himself. I am 99% sure it's him because we can see from the sleeve that it's the same snakeskin coat that he's wearing in the trailers, and he also has a snake thumb ring. Now, I love a thumb ring more than anyone else, but the repeated imagery of snakes in Resident Evil Requiem, for Victor especially, I find really interesting. Snakes are known for shedding their skin, and although the shedding of their skin doesn't make them appear to look any different, it is kind of a metaphor for like changing your appearance. And they're also kind of stereotyped as like sly and sneaky, but that seems very unfair to me. But the fact that Victor is using all of this snake imagery makes me wonder if there's some way that he is trying to change what he is. He already doesn't look entirely human, so I wonder if he kind of sees the snake as like a kindred animal, one that sheds its skin and kind of becomes a different being every couple of years. I don't really have much more to say about this ring apart from that, although I bet you this is a bit of merch that's gonna come out at some point. But I do think that it gives an indication as to Victor's state of mind when he's doing all of these horrible things to Grace and Leon. Right here in the Atrium, we have more examples of the symbol up here in the ceiling and over the archways of the doors. Now, although this could just be like decorative motif, it does look suspiciously to me like the umbrella symbol, just kind of like abstracted a bit. We know the umbrella symbol comes from the Four Lords from Resident Evil Village, and that's where it's originally taken from, but I wonder if this is kind of like an offshoot of umbrella almost. We know that Victor has had his hands on the Rhodes Civic Care Centre for a very long time because of the photograph that Leon found, so it makes me wonder whether he might have done some refurbishing and whether this might be a symbol of some kind of organisation that he belongs to or believes in. Of course, it could also just be just a pretty symbol, which wouldn't be an awful thing, but the fact that there's this many of the same repeated symbol over and over again makes me think it might be significant somehow. We know Leon is the action-focused hero of Resident Evil Requiem, but it turns out that Grace herself can also do some melee attacks, although I'm not entirely sure just how effective they would be. In this scene where she comes against the zombie chef for the first time, or we assume it's the first time, there is a very brief prompt to attack him with a melee attack when he gets close enough. Right here you can very briefly see it. In the top corner here, this is clearly the end of the word melee attack. Now, as I said before, I don't think this is going to be particularly effective against the zombie chef, but I do like the fact that she can have the audacity to at least try. And one last thing about this zombie chef, I've been trying to figure out what he says in this particular bit for, well, minutes, not hours, but minutes, and I've tried really hard. I think he might be saying frog's legs. But if you think you can distinguish what it is that he's saying, do let me know in the comments below. I would like to think there was something a bit more significant than frog's legs, but for a chef working on a fancy dinner, it does kind of make sense that he'd say that, although it doesn't have quite the lore implications that I wished it would. I also just want to draw attention to how detailed this kitchen is. Now, when she's coming around the corner here, Grace can get something from this bucket. I wouldn't want to stick my hand in there, but good for her. And I also want to draw attention to the detail that there are still steaks being being cooked on the grill here. They're probably way overdone like leather, but we also have what looks like soup tureens here, a blender, all of these like little prep containers that will be very familiar to anyone who's ever worked in a kitchen, right down to the fact that there are tongs, and later on in the scene where Grace walks into the dining room, we can see that there are deviled eggs, and there's even orders up here on the side that the kitchen staff have had to deal with, which I just think is fantastic, fantastic attention to detail, and I cannot wait to read what all of these different orders say before I get cleaver in the back of my skull. Now in this bit right here, you're going to have to listen fairly carefully. That sound you can hear is the zombie chef, because right here is his kitchen. This is the part that Grace runs out of in that last scene, which is a cool detail in the fact that it kind of shows us how the map is set out. Right around this corner we have the dining room that she's about to run into, so it's cool to see that the kitchen and the dining room are realistically close together, because God forbid you let your food get cold. When Grace is interrupting this dinner, we get to see a bit of detail behind the scenes about what it might have been like to work at the Civic Care Centre. Right here it says that this seems to have been the care centre's primary self-defense weapon, which makes you wonder, why would they need to have self-defense weapons? I think this definitely implies that the other scientists knew something was going on, and they knew they were working on something that wasn't entirely up to code or legal, so they had to have self-defense weapons. Which is gnarly, and potentially they got what they deserved. This zombie right here, this singer, is my absolute favourite. Number one, because she looks incredible, and number two, because after she's done screaming into Grace's ears, you can see that she like lifts out her arms to like finish her aria, which I think is such a cool detail and kind of makes me more endeared to her as a zombie. There's a much better view of it just here. So right here, she's screaming in Grace's ears and doing what I'm sure is a beautiful rendition of a song known only to her, and here you can see that she is still gesticulating afterwards because she's finishing her song, and I love that attention to detail. It makes me really interested to see what other characteristics the other zombies are gonna have. I think I might have figured out how everyone got turned so quickly. Now, it won't come as a surprise to any of you that if you look at the background of all of these scenes in this footage, there are loads of smashed alcohol glasses and wine bottles and beer bottles, and it makes me wonder if maybe what it was that turned all of these people into zombies was in the alcohol that had been provided for this event or this gala that I think was going on at the same time as Leon arrived. It would make sense if Victor did something like a toast to get everyone to have at least a sip of alcohol, even the doctors before they went back to work, but then they would have inadvertently dosed themselves with whatever it was that turned them into these zombies. The reason I think this is likely is because while having bottles of wine and stuff isn't really out of the ordinary, the fact that so many are smashed makes me think that people knocked them over as they were being turned because they were just setting them down. And it was also explained potentially why that lady that got chainsawed at the beginning wasn't affected in the same way as everyone else, because she was busy greeting Leon when the toast took place, so she didn't have a chance to gulp down some of the dosed wine. That is quite a tinfoil hat theory in my opinion. It's maybe stretching a little bit too far, but I was trying to think how they would turn all of these people into zombies at the same time without having that one woman turned as well. And if you had something come through the air conditioning or the air vents, she would also have turned, as would Leon, but she didn't, so I think there was something in the wine. This next bit makes me want to figure out how they did the blood and gore in this, because if you shoot zombies in just the right place, their eye pops out. This zombie did not have a distended eye a couple of seconds ago. In fact, if I just cycle back here, this guy's eyeball also pops out, FYI. But right here, when Grace is shooting this guy in the head, his eyeball just straight up pops out of his skull, and I really want to know what kind of gore system they were working with to make this so realistic that the impact can dislodge part of his model intentionally and have it just flapping around. Just really cool. I can't wait to see all the messed up kinds of things that happen to zombies in this game. Now, I am sure someone who can read Braille has already translated this, and it's pretty obvious when you think about it, but the Braille in this section right here translates to star, sun, and moon, and it appears that Grace is going to be using some kind of clues to answer these puzzles because we can access the files right here in the corner, which implies that there's something in the files to help Grace along. This bit right here has an interesting detail if you just listen. It sounds to me like this doctor or nurse is giving a report to this doctor or researcher about something that happened, or at least she's trying to, even though she's dead. We know that the zombies have some kind of remnants of their human intelligence left, so it would make sense to me if that part that remained in her was the part that needs to report to the researcher what it is that she's done in her shift. Another really cool thing about this zombie is that she's trying to stab you with a hypodermic needle of some kind. Maybe there's something in this that she's trying to inject you with, but more likely it's just a weapon she's picked up that she's going to try and take you down with. But I love that detail of the fact that it's a needle, not a knife, a needle, because it makes sense for her to have one. I've paused this at just the right point to show you that this is the ID wristband I was talking about. This looks like a V, but it's actually a W of the wristband that hasn't been completed yet. We can see on this icon here that it says level 1. So this very strongly implies that Grace is going to need these wristbands to unlock closed areas of the Rhodes Civic Care Centre. And right here we can see that next to this door is the sign level 1, which shows that Grace needs these wristbands to open these doors. Now it's very likely, almost certain in fact, that the more seniority you need to open the doors in the hospital that lead to more confidential areas, you're going to need to get them from much more important people. So Grace isn't just going to be able to get everywhere with the level 1 wristband. She's going to need level 2, 3, 4, etc, etc. So good luck needing to find MacGuffins in very out of the way places in the Rhodes Civic Care Centre. This part here took quite some time to pause on perfectly, but this is the area that Grace goes into that has that door. Right here we can see that some kind of barricade has been set up to prevent whatever the hell is behind this door from breaking in. It looks like this is one of those doors that fall all the way down. This might just be a wall, but I don't know, the fact that these look like clearly barricaded items, like we've got a bed here and wheelchairs, makes me think that this is perhaps where the research subjects go, and whoever it was who managed to stay cognizant for long enough decided that they would be much more comfortable if there was a load of bulky stuff just up against that door so that nothing got through, or if it did, it would have to climb over this stuff to get to them. Our preview for Resident Evil Requiem went over this, but there are zombies in Resident Evil Requiem that will reanimate from the corpses of zombies you've already taken down for the second time. These things are called blister heads, I think, but we can actually see that Grace has the option to do that to a corpse right here. Now, she's already created this hemolytic injector, but there is still the option here to apply it to this seemingly properly dead corpse to prevent it from rising again. And that's because as they can rise from already dead bodies that are properly dead, not just walking around dead, it makes sense that you might just want to double, triple make sure that you're not going to be running back through this room later on and the zombie that you thought you killed rises up behind you to stab you in the neck with their teeth. This bit right here is pretty grim, but I'm going to say it anyway. No shame, no shade, but this patient appears to have soiled themselves. I would soil myself as well if I was in the middle of a hospital where clearly something bad was going on and I might be next. But this explosion here also shows us the Gore system. Right here we can see two halves of a ribcage kind of sprout out from this zombie. And again, I just really want to know how this Gore system works because I find it so interesting. This is some detail about the antique coins that we saw in the reveal showcase for Resident Evil Requiem. It says an old metal coin used for games that can be exchanged for prizes in the parlour. So the parlour sounds like it's going to have some kind of game machines, or maybe there's like a object exchange system. We know that Grace has a way to upgrade her abilities, kind of similar to the function that the bird cages in the caravan in Resident Evil 7 provided for Ethan, so I would bet that this is one of the coins that you will use to upgrade Grace's abilities and get those prizes, which will actually be things like steroid shots to make her stronger or something like that. I've also tried to figure out what this is precisely. It looks like a figure with a blindfold on, but I'm not entirely sure of that. I feel like the image may or may not be significant. In Resident Evil 7 these coins had pelicans on them, which people very kindly informed me is because the pelican is the state animal of Louisiana where Resident Evil 7 takes place, so it could be that this is just a cool little Easter egg, or it could be much more significant that the games in the parlour require this specific kind of iconography on the coin. And lastly, I'm going to finish off with Leon because he has a type of very particular currency that I don't know what it is, but it's clearly important for something. This isn't the same as the antique coins either because it doesn't appear to have the coin symbol next to it, it just simply appears as a C. Right here, this is the currency that I'm telling you about, obviously, but look, it's just a C with a line through it, so I wonder if this is just kind of like, maybe there's like a vending machine somewhere that he can buy things from, maybe this is literally just money, maybe the C stands for something else, I'm not entirely sure. But either way, this is an antique coin, so if it was the antique coin you'd expect it to have a tiny face in the middle potentially, although I guess the C could stand for coin. But anyway, Leon has his own kind of currency going on, he's got a lot of his own stuff going on, and you can see it right here in the top right corner. And there you go, those are all of the unhinged, really tiny details that I've spotted in this gameplay that we have from Resident Evil Requiem. I'm sure you can tell already by now, but I cannot wait for this game to come out on February the 27th. So if you are just as excited as I am, please do subscribe to Eurogamer and give this a thumbs up if you want to see more of these unhinged deep dives. I do have one up already for Fable if that's something you're interested in, but my main message is to comment, share and like this, because the more reach that this gets, I get more width to do these kinds of videos that I love doing with all of my dead blackened heart. So I will see you folks next time.